We need to talk about Kevin. Hello, hunters, and welcome back to the Salawag's Widespread Gut Reaction, where I watch things and react from the gut. I literally just watched We Should Talk About Kevin. I thought I could wait on it. I thought I could sit on it, let it simmer, but I can't. Wow, what an interesting, dark, creepy movie. And if you're following the news with Ezra Miller, whoa. So what we should talk about Kevin stars Tilda Swinton and John C. Reilly and Ezra Miller, directed by Lynne, I lost your name, Ramsay. We should talk about Kevin was directed by Lynne Ramsay. She's only directed a few feature films. She has some shorts under her belt as well. And I haven't seen anything else but this, so now I'm interested in seeing more. The film is very interesting. It's very much, you're starting off with Tilda Swinton clearly having experienced something traumatic, living in kind of a crummy home. People are looking at her funny. One of the very first scenes in the movie, a woman comes up to her and slaps her and calls her a murderer. And it's it does put you kind of on a sympathetic side because she doesn't seem like she's guilty of anything. But the movie unravels with this sort of parallel storylines of sort of three different time periods. One time period has not had kids yet, and she's just sort of meeting John C. Reilly. The other time period is having kids, and most of the time period we spend is watching her first child, Kevin, grow. And it's a very interesting, slow build, creepy movie where clearly, obviously, the title is called We Should Talk About Kevin, but the movie itself is giving you this character who's clearly off. There's something off about him. And without spoiling too much, if you're interested in the sort of more cerebral, creepy type of film in the vein of like Memento or Joker, something where the main character or one of the main characters is definitely responsible for something or has some kind of tick, something that's wrong with them that will eventually build to violence. If you're interested in that kind of slow burn, because it's kind of a slow movie, but it's very cerebral. We go and we bounce. It's non-linear, so we bounce back and forward through time. Like I said, there's three time periods, and if that's the kind of movie that's your cup of tea, then you're absolutely going to enjoy it. Because it's very hard to describe and sell it like, oh, it's that killer movie. Because it's not really that killer movie. It's really much more of a sort of, almost more like a documentation of someone who has sort of clearly got something wrong with them and then watching sort of where it could potentially come from and where it goes. So without spoiling anything, I think it's a great movie. I think if you're a filmmaker, you want to learn about storytelling, I have to take some notes. I don't even know fully what to say just yet, but I do think it's a very good film. There's even a Halloween sequence, very brief, not this kind of Halloween, but kids are running around in Halloween, so it's perfect for that Halloween mood. But yeah, spoiler free. Definitely check it out if you're into that kind of dark, slow burn kind of movie. It has not 1 hour photo. I think 1 hour photo is still a little bit more family friendly than this movie. But yeah, so that's spoiler free. What I can say. So spoilers, right from the jump. I think it was the film is shot very creatively. We're seeing a lot of strange shot choices, a lot of the camera going in and out of focus, and not in a way that feels amateurish or anything like that, but just it's a very creative style that they're going for. Where the film right up front is putting us in Tilda Swinton, who is our lead, our protagonist. We're right in sort of in her headspace, and it starts off during this. It's all a lot of red. Red is a very prominent color. We just see people having a bunch of red something thrown on them. And at first I thought it was guts. I thought it was maybe it's pig guts. Later I think it ends up being tomatoes. It's like she's in Italy and it's a tomato, some kind of tomato festival or something wild. And people are covered in red and it does look like blood. And you see Tilda Swinton so happy, single, part of this big rave, part of this big weird thing, and suddenly we're in the present, where whatever has happened to her, and she's very fraught and very, wound up and very cold, and something's clearly upsetting her that she's not talking about. And what I love about the movie is how much is not explained, and the movie doesn't waste too much time with dialogue. If there was more dialogue in the script, I'm glad it's not edited. It's not in there. They did a good job of really just keeping us in Tilda Swinton's headspace, where in the present, she's walking around. She wakes up in her bed after dreaming about that Italy sequence. And when she wakes up, she finds her house is all covered in red and people are staring at her, and slowly flashbacks reveal, like I said, there's a scene where she gets slapped in the face and called a murderer, although she's not the murderer. But it's such a horrific thing that happens to her that when you get to the final scene, I think the beginning of the movie makes absolute sense. And it's just it's a sad movie, but at the same time, kind of a beautiful movie. It's very hard to explain because it's like pure emotion. If Memento is on one side of the spectrum, where it's pure the intellectual extrapolation of emotion, I would say is what you could say Memento is, where it's just a 2-hour movie about Leonard Shelby from San Francisco, and he's got a memory problem, and he's just trying to logically work out what he does every day. You have that on one side, and on the other side, you have the pure emotion, like left brain, right brain. On the other side, you have the pure emotion, the pure color. Memento is literally black and white. This movie is so vivid with color, and so much of it being red, but red is also a symbol of what she's going through. And I really like that subjective style of the storytelling, where it's really just in her head as she's trying to work out everything that's led up to the moment that she's in. And so she has the red on her house. She's trying to go get a job. A woman's slapping her. People are looking at her like she's odd. Even people, when she gets the job, people are looking at her funny. But I love that slowly throughout the film, we see Kevin, and right from birth, his birth we see through these sort of reflective mirrors, like the doctor mirrors that they have when they're looking down at you. And you see Tilda Swinton in such a strange, warped perspective. That was very symbolic of kind of her mental state, because she's odd. I do find her to be an odd person. But she's not odd in the sense of being like outwardly unusual to other people. She's just got her own way. She's just got her own way, her own thing that she wanted her life to be. And in many ways, the birth of Kevin represents the end of that. Because once and it's in the lines of the doctors when he's being born, stop resisting, stop resisting. Part of her is clearly resisting the child being born, resisting her life changing. And you see, and in the very next scene after Kevin's born, John C. Reilly, who is her husband, I'm like, okay, that's interesting. He's the one holding the baby and having a great time, and she is just like cold and shut off, and she seems like violated, and there's this lack of interest in what she now has to do, and it's all there, and even though it's all in one shot, but it just tells you an enormous amount about what she's going through. And she even just has this distance with Kevin. Every time we see her, she's holding Kevin at a distance when he's a toddler. She at first she's like, oh, she's trying to be a sweet mother, but she is holding him at a distance. So there is this subtle visual telling us that the character is still kind of rejecting this child, even though she's trying to be a good mom. But in the very next scene, he's crying his eyes out, and she doesn't know what to do, and she starts walking him around, and then literally walks him to a construction site where someone's using a jackhammer to drown out the tears. And that, although you can understand from the mom's side wanting to drown out the crying, on the other hand, that's incredibly traumatic for the baby to be around that horrible sound. And again, it's just that resistance. There's this anti-maternal feeling within her when it comes to Kevin. And the unfortunate thing is that that is reciprocated. When we see Kevin as a little bit older and 7 to 10 years old, he always looks at his mother with this sort of spite. And it's like this unforgiven anger for whatever that experience was as a baby. But even as a baby, he was rejecting her and not happy when she held him. And so, and really there's no answer. What I think is beautiful is that, we go through this whole movie and we see Kevin grown up, played by Ezra Miller. We go through this whole movie and see that his anger and his spite never goes away, no matter what she tries to do. And it builds to a place where he clearly has this violent tendency within him. And it's not shown, but it's suggested later on. They do have a second child, they have a daughter. And it's not shown, but it's very heavily suggested that the daughter has this hamster, and it's hinted that Kevin killed the hamster. And I mean, it's not spoken, but I think it's safe to say. And then I've heard only in Family Guy, so I have no idea if this is true, that the killing of small animals is an indicator of a serial killer. I don't know if that's true. I haven't done my research, but that's what hit my head as soon as that hamster was missing. But then the sister lost her eye shortly after that because of some chemical that was left out. And we know that Kevin was supposed to be looking out for her. So there's this sort of sick, angry evil lurking within this guy that he just can't resist and he can't turn off. It's just on. And it's tragic when you see the father, who's the only one that Kevin gets along with, but it also seems to be partially just a guise to make the mom jealous and angry. The father introduces Kevin to arrows. Again, remember, this is a spoiler section, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, I'm spoiling it. But the father is the one that introduces Kevin to shooting arrows. And at first it's these childish little things. And you get this little scene where child Kevin's shooting the arrows. He's shooting the little arrows with suction cups. He misses the target, and John C. Reilly's like, oh, it's okay, you'll get it. And then he turns around and then he shoots it, and it hits the window, and it clearly was aimed exactly at Tilda Swinton's head. And there's all these little hints that Kevin has this hyper intelligence, and he's still having his diapers changed at about 8, 9, 10 years old. And it's not till Tilda Swinton finally gets angry with him, because he clearly is deliberately waiting to poop to make her clean it up at a certain point, that she just grabs him and throws him, and then he breaks his arm. And that's when he stops wearing his diapers. But he's trying to provoke her, but he also wants to do something himself. So he has this evil within him, but that's also this intelligence. but it's without compassion. And he sort of verbalizes this comes from her. This comes from years as a child, him having this feeling that she didn't want him. And she didn't want him, but it doesn't mean she didn't try. And that's the tragic thing, is that she did try as a mother. And John C. Reilly did really care as a father. There's no real sense of genuine neglect or abandonment, but it's just that this kid had something in him that he could not stop. And it unfortunately builds toward a sequence where fully grown, or at least 16-year-old Ezra Miller in high school puts all these car locks on the doors of his high school and ends up using a whole set of arrows to kill or maim a bunch of his fellow classmates. It's a really tragic buildup. Again, like citing Joker, I think one of the beautiful things about this movie, and also my friend showed me this movie, we had just watched Joker, so there's a sort of a parallel thread going on here. But if you look at Joker, Joker's a movie that I would call the heavy-handed reality approach, where he's spoiler alert for Joker, he's horribly abused as a kid, allowed to be abused by his mom, neglected, horribly abused throughout his life and made fun of, and develops this sort of laughing disorder where when he's in pain he laughs instead of crying, and this only becomes something that further estranges him from other people. And Joker finds himself in this really cold and unforgiving and completely a world completely lack of compassion. And that compassion aspect, I would say, is the only thing that's real consistent between these characters. But I would say, like, Joker's the heavy-handed world where obviously if you went through all these horrible things, it makes sense for there to be this dark part of you that wants to lash out and werewolf, as the Joker says. Whereas Kevin, there was absolutely effort. He comes from a good family, and there was effort to be kind to him. And yet, he still ended up being this serial murderer and quite arrogant about it. When the doors of the school are finally opened, he comes out and smiles as he's arrested. And it's this arrogant wickedness that's within both characters that, in the Joker's case, it's part of his genuine spirit, and it's also that with this kid. But at least with the Joker, you have the feeling like if he just had more compassion in his life and just had more guidance and more people that cared about him, there was a chance that this shadow part of his soul would have never even shown or seen the light of day. But in the case of Kevin, it's literally that anti-argument. It's like, well, what if that person grew up? And I think that's the cold truth is, I mean, I've said it before, people are animals, but the cold truth is that you don't know what's lurking in people. You just don't know what's lurking within people at any moment of any given time. And some people might be struggling against their darker nature, and some people might be giving in on quite often. But you just don't know. You don't know what could lead to the other. But what's interesting, what led to the watching of this movie, was I had stumbled upon this YouTube video where a cop pulled over a kid. He was a black kid driving a really expensive car, but he had been speeding. It was just a typical traffic stop, like you're going 23 miles over the limit, kid. What's going on? And he can smell the pot, and the kid admits to smoking pot and all this. And the kid had said, "Oh, I was given permission." But the kid lies about his name. He probably lies about giving permission, because it ends up that the person supposedly who had given him permission to use the car was the dead body in the trunk of that car. And as soon as that body was revealed, this kid, he's like 17 years old, it looks like, he just starts crying, and he's like, I didn't actually do it. I just hit him. I just punched him. I didn't actually kill him. And now, whether again he's lying about that or not, I don't know. That that's the whole. I don't know if that YouTube video is out there, but it was just so real, and it reminded me of this story I had heard about of back in the city, back in San Francisco, where this security guard had been sort of attacked by these three teenage. I don't know if they were full-on gang members or what, but it was like these three Latin kids, and they were trying to get this security guard to fight them. They were trying to charge him up for a fight, and but they wanted the security guard to act in some way that could make it so that they had a legitimate reason to fight him back. And it's so strange. That's just such odd behavior. You know what I mean? It's like the kids clearly want to do something, but they don't want to directly feel responsible for doing it, even though it's something that they are either what they were told to do, egged on to do, whatever. But either way, they're trying to stir up the security guard. They finally said something to trigger the security guard, and I don't know if he swung a fist or made a move, but that's when one of the kids just pulled out a knife and just stabbed the guard in the stomach. And later on, when the cops caught the kids, and the kids were being identified, they were all crying their eyes out in guilt and shame for what they had done. These little wannabe thugs, or maybe they were living the thug life, who knows? But it sounds very similar to this guy in the car. And who knows why even that happens? You know what I mean? All these different reasons people go to violence. It's very strange, it's very bizarre. Why do people go to these absurd places for violence? And I definitely feel like when it comes to like the Joker or Kevin, some people just got evil in them, and they just can't resist it. No matter what you do, they can't resist that evil. And what's beautiful is when we reach the end of Kevin, it's kind of what I described with those kids, where 2 years had passed at the point of what is the present time, with Tilda Swinton dealing with her son having killed a whole bunch of high school students. And it's revealed at the end of the movie also the father and the little sister. It's really tragic. And like I said, when Kevin had come out of the school after committing these heinous crimes, he was arrogant and he was happy about it. But 2 years into being in jail, and he's about to go to actual prison, that's the first time that he looks at his mother with fear, and he doesn't know what he's getting himself into. And she asks him, why did you do it? And he tells her, at the time I thought I knew why, but I'm really not sure. And that genuine honesty is just, it's the first thing that gives them a genuine hug and love between each other. It's just so sad, you know what I mean? This needless violence that came out of this kid that he was so arrogant about in his youth, and now facing real time and not having freedom. It's like, did you really think you were going to be, what did you think was going to happen? Like, people try to warn you all the time. What did you think was going to happen? And I think about those kids, and I think about that kid with the car. I think about those kids that stabbed the security guard, and how each one of them ended up crying because they realized, wow, I thought I knew within myself, I was like, someone told you that this would make you a man. Someone told you that you puff up your chest and you be a man and you go kill someone. That makes you hard, bro. That makes you a man. But it's like, one of the things I grew up with, again, growing up in Latin schools and growing up in an urban environment, so many of the teachers would show us these movies based on real stories about gang violence, and they would always end with some former gang member who's been in prison for 20 years who said, I killed someone when I was a kid, and I thought I was trying to be a man. And I realized that that wasn't the right thing to do. And they were trying to guide the younger generation away. But there's only so much you can do from a jail cell. Because out there in the world where people are having whatever suffering, you don't have a father, you don't have a mother, or whatever you're missing in your life, and you're just looking for some kind of guidance. Out there in the world, those serpents who are telling you to do those things, you know, they're not telling it for you. They're telling you to do that for themselves. Because they want their little soldiers. But then they don't want to serve the time. And so maybe some of them serve the time and they're still after it. But those kids in that moment of being caught, crying their eyes out, knew for sure, without a doubt, what they had done was wrong. And I just think about the buildup with that security guard of how much it took that you could see that the part of you, kid, the part of you that's not actually willing to just come out and stab the security guard, the part of you that needs the security guard to also be mad so you can, in your mind, be in a fight, that part of you that's resisting it is your conscience that knows what you're doing is bad. And you gotta listen to that thing. You gotta listen to your conscience, because it's there. And I think a lot of people out there, again, and I had a point at one point where, I thought someone was being tough on my sister, and I thought, well, I'll talk tough to them too, and I'll puff up my chest, and I'll say, well, I'll fight you, I'll beat your ass. And I was trying to talk them this kind of way, and all I ended up doing was ending friendships. And that wasn't good, but I realized also afterward, this isn't me. That's not how I talk. That's not what I want. That's not the way I want to talk to other people, And so now that's not how I approach things. It's not the right thing to do. There's a line in the movie Men Who Stare at Ghosts, it's played for a joke, but it's also not a joke. It's gentleness is the strength. And to add to that very thought, everyone knows Optimus Prime, voiced by Peter Weller, an epic voice that defined 80s cartoons. I would have my own Optimus Prime with Goliath, voiced by Keith David. But Optimus Prime, that classic voice, Peter Weller talks about, Peter Cullen. Peter Cullen's voice that defined an entire generation of cartoons. He talks about getting the job for Optimus Prime. And he talks about telling the job offer and job description to his brother, who was actually a war veteran. He wasn't, his brother was. And his brother spoke to him and sounded like Optimus Prime. Peter, don't play a hero. Play a good man, have the strength to be gentle. And that is the way Peter Cullen has played the voice of Optimus Prime since his audition. It's what got him the job. But, these are important lessons, like the war veterans or the former gang members in jail who just want out of the life and realize this wasn't good for them. It's like puffing up your chest and acting all tough and trying to start fights with people does not make you a man and will not lead to your happiness. It will inevitably lead to your misery and to regret and guilt and shame. Because anyone can hurt anyone at any time. It takes nothing to hurt another person. We are only made out of flesh. The strength to not hurt, the strength to help and to be kind and to forgive, that takes enormous strength, like you would not believe. And I really, really relate to just Kevin's last look at the end of what we need to talk about Kevin. Just the realization, like, oh, what I thought I was doing really doesn't make sense anymore. I just all of this stuff was on my mind today. It was just and so it was very fitting to watch this movie and find that even the sick, clearly evil Kevin, even this character could kind of realize, wow, whatever was going on with me no longer makes sense. I think Hollywood movies are defined by trying to have those clear-cut answers. Well, it's for Cybertron and ruling over you. Okay, you know what I mean? But the truth is, people don't always know why they do what they do, and I loved the honesty that sometimes the truth is just as ambiguous as whatever it was that happened. Something was sitting inside within someone, and they're not sure why it was there. Maybe there was no why. Maybe there was, like you could go deep and say scientifically you had a chemical imbalance, or you just needed to be pulled out of the environment and placed in isolation for some time to reflect. Sometimes there's just no answer. And I thought that level of honesty was so beautiful. And like I said, it's the polar opposite of Memento. Memento has it has story threads that are not answered, but it does have a clear answer for the behaviors of Leonard Shelby from San Francisco. And I think and that's the intellectual side. That's the side of you that's plotting and thinking and is conscious of what you're doing. Whereas we're purely on the emotional side with, we need to talk about Kevin, where it's, because, Leonard Shelby, again, spoilers, if you haven't seen Memento, don't listen to this part. Leonard Shelby is technically a serial killer. He has killed multiple people and stolen their identities and their vehicles. And but not known it because of his memory issue, but he was being taken advantage of. See, I think the beautiful thing about, if we compare like Christopher Nolan's movies versus just this one movie, because I don't know Lynne Ramsay's movies so well, but I think Christopher Nolan's movies are very much a very honest contemplation about intelligent people who are aware of why they are the way they are. But even those people can be taken advantage of by society, and in turn take advantage of society as a form of revenge. That's kind of Christopher Nolan's take, where I think the beautiful thing being spoken about we should talk about Kevin, is that sometimes you really don't know. Like Kevin, like I said, very hyper intelligent, but he has this emotional wickedness, this emotional evil that is too strong for him to resist. And I think a lot of people fall into that category, where the truth is they can't answer why they went that way. They just did. And only with time to reflect can they realize that whatever motivation they had truly wasn't a logical motivation that makes sense. And so I really love the power of that. Again, the movie is in itself is very unclear with what's happening, because we're bouncing through timelines in the beginning so much, we're so rapidly, but it's very much the experience, I think, of being a person, and being a person going through something horrible where you just can't quite grasp the past, present, and future. And you're in the future, but you're like, you're still kind of stuck in a past as if it was the present. Why did this happen? I'm still stuck in this moment. Why did this happen? Both Memento and We Need to Talk About Kevin, very subjective movies in terms of how the film language was used. But the choice to be so dirty and unclear it's also, that is film language that's communicating to you because the movie literally is out of focus a lot in the opening 10 minutes, meaning there's this literal emotional lack of clarity. And by the end of the movie slowly progresses and becomes sharper and slicker and less handheld and more smooth. And it's and like I said, there's red thrown across Tilda Swinton's house. So she spends the whole movie scrubbing off the red of the house. And it probably only took her like a week to get rid of, or maybe more. But in terms of the storytelling of the movie, she's going through 2 years of dealing with the trauma of what her son did and being called a murderer. And there's a creepy guy at work who tries to hit on her and make a move, and when she says no, he's slithering, and he just looks like a creep. But he says, "Oh, you're gonna be a stuck-up bitch toward me? Well, who's gonna want you after what happened?" And you know what? That, I think, is both an internal reflection of herself, but also that is sick the serpents, right? I mentioned serpents. The people out there who just want something for themselves will use that against you in order to get you to do what they want. And that's what he was doing. But she still maintained her no. Again, she has this characteristic of resistance. And so I'm glad she continued to say no with her actions and left the party. And it's sad, her boss tried to keep her at the party, but her boss didn't see what happened. But it was just like sad to think at least one person at the party did want her to be there and just to have fun, and didn't care about her baggage. And she couldn't even enjoy that. She was finally having a moment of joy after so much trauma, and this sick, creepy little serpent had to ruin it. And for all you serpents out there, méchant, as my French teacher would say, méchant. I don't know, that's been coming back to me lately. But really, like it was a messed up sequence, and but yet it's a part of her where she's finally, slowly, everything's becoming smoother. The flashbacks are sharp and clear. And where everything is red in the first half of the movie, the second half of the movie, slowly we're getting more white. She's become clean again. And not really that she's like, oh, I'm all better from my trauma now, but just that her state of mind becomes clean. And it's tragic and sad that throughout the movie, she multiple times is visiting Kevin in jail, and they just say nothing. And there's this beautiful moment of match framing where, as a kid, Kevin, and her just were the same distance apart and looked away from each other. And it cuts to present day jail where they're again looking away from each other. But now they're in the darkness. And it's just this, they just can't speak, and I think that again is reality. Sometimes things are so painful that there's no words to describe it, or you're incapable of getting the words out. And that level of honesty, you know what I mean? Again, with Memento, it's that, the emotion isn't really as present as the mind. The mind is trying to justify and explain. But in this movie, it's really, the emotion is so genuine that there is no justification. There is no explanation. There's no Hollywood shoving dialogue in to make it more interesting. It's already interesting because you're like, oh, how can these people talk about it? How can these people talk about what happened? And so and then there's this great scene where Kevin is, I don't know if it's on video, if it's a video chat or something, or if it's a video recording that Kevin made, but he has this sick little genuine speech. There's some real truth in it. Like I said, he's hyper intelligent. But he has this speech where he talks about, people sit at home and watching TV all day, and then they think, oh, I'm going to get out and have fun, and I'm going to go to a movie. And basically, you're sitting in front of another bigger TV. And what are you watching? You're watching me. And he's like, and he looks so sick, and you can have the sense that he must have killed already. And there's some truth in that. But at the same time, look at what the cost of doing what he did was, is that at the very end, after 2 years of not talking during every single visit, like I said, Tilda Swinton's house is finally clean. The filmmaking has stopped being shaky. It stopped being out of focus. It stopped being so red, and it's back to yellow. It's back to white. It's back to clarity. And at the very end, this is the moment where Kevin is going to go to actual prison. He's just been in jail waiting, and now his head is shaved, and he's going to go to actual prison. And you just see, this is the moment where she can finally speak. And with just a little bit of anger, she says, I need you to tell me why. Why? Well, essentially, why did you kill everyone? Why did you kill your father and your sister? And we get back to that honesty, the look on his face. And, I know I brought up Ezra Miller's stuff in the news and all that. And truth is, I really have not read that much up into it. It sounds, from what I've heard, it sounds bad. But in all honesty, I don't know enough about it to really comment on it. And I don't think it's my job to either. I think, whatever's going on with him is between him and his victims, and it's just not my business. And like the honesty of this movie, I just love that his character really doesn't have an answer, and maybe there's no answer. Maybe is evil like a cold, where it can lock you down until it's brought you to your worst, and then it goes away because it's done with you, or is evil just a part of who you are, or is it because she didn't hold him as a baby and there was just this long, deep-seated anger against her? So many possible questions, and the truth is there's no real good answer. And I think that's as honest as it can possibly get. Again, I think about those kids who stabbed the security guard, or that kid on YouTube with the body in the trunk, and the look on Kevin's face, the guilt, like the sudden guilt after realizing what you've done. Every one of them knew what the right thing was to do, and every single one of them would have preferred they just done the right thing. And that's all I can really say. I just really thought that was powerful, very powerful emotional piece, and a really good film. Definitely check it out. If I spoiled it, but you don't care about spoilers, but this gets you to watch it, cool. Hey, let me know what you think of the movie. And at the end of the day, look, I don't think this is a great podcast. If you like it, fantastic. I'm up to 5 views on some videos. Whee! But really, I'm interested in more in discussion. Like, I don't care if you like it, awesome. But if you don't like it, hey, I agree with you. But I'm more interested in discussion. So really, let me know if you see the movie, if you've seen the movie because of this review. And let me know if you have any personal stories of your own that of people acting out of character, or yourself acting in a way that you knew was wrong, or if somehow the movie spoke to you on some kind of level, if you noticed the choice of, like what I was talking about was when the camera's blurry and out of focus and shaking in the beginning to going very steady. That's called film language. So if you notice the film language and you want to talk about that, hey, let's talk about that. If you worked on the movie and you got some stories, or you got a cool link to an interview, that would be cool for me to watch. Hey, please share that too. I'm more interested in discussion. I don't need praise, and I really don't want to see your negative comments, because I'll probably just agree with you anyway. But really, just hey, if you want to talk about the movie, leave a comment down below. That'd be very cool. Just because I think the movie deserves discussion, or share your thoughts. I may not even respond, but if you just share your thoughts on the movie, I'm interested to know how it reflected on you. And if anything I said during this video was useful to you, or you have a story that would go well with it, please share. So anyway, that's all I got to say. Thank you for watching. Aloha, nerds, and peace.